Hi there.
Hey Brian, how are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. So how's the weather down in Mexico?
Absolutely fantastic, as it always is.
What's the
A
temperature
beautiful
down
place to
there?
be. Right now, I actually have a thermometer here. It's currently 70 degrees in the house, and that is with no heating or cooling. I don't use any air conditioning, and I don't use any heating, although I do have a fireplace. And I don't usually light that unless I have guests. But in the winter, it's nice to have a little bit of fire. But that's one of the big benefits of being here actually is climate. I was just talking with somebody about that. It's never hot and muggy, and it never snows. It's never too cold,
Yeah, I hear it gets like
which is
negative
just
55.
great. Yeah. Now down on the coast, it's too hot. That's why I don't live there. So
That's perfect. 70 degrees. I mean, that's like a vegetable gardener's dream.
yeah, it really is. And I do food forest farming here. So it's really the ideal climate. I know of one place in the world that has a better rain pattern, but I don't want to live in that country currently. I don't want to say where it is because I want to keep it a secret. It's like the amazing place. But this place is really excellent. And one of the reasons I picked it was because it is so possible to do food forest farming here.
So
Easy.
how did you get started with food forests? So you've been doing it for 20 years now and
20 years here, yeah. But when I grew up, I was up in the US. And my dad had a big garden. We had about half an acre. And so since I was like 5 years old, I've been dinking around the garden. Of course, at 5 years old, I probably wasn't very useful. But um, but that was back up in the Seattle area. And
Okay.
so the difference is that there the rains come in the winter and the summers are warmer. I can't say they're hot because they're not that hot, but they're really it's great summers up there. But I don't like that. Here, the rains come in the summer and the winters are dry, which is perfect,
Yeah.
you know. So the winters are all sunny and nice, and then this time of year you do get some big storms and lightning and lots of rain because I'm only on rain capture here. All my
So
water comes from rain.
So what inspired you to move down to Mexico? You just
A
cheaper
whole
land
bunch of
or
factors. There's a whole bunch of factors. One is I really want to get out of the U.S. I object to paying taxes to kill people I don't know around the world. I object to the land of the free having the highest incarceration rate in the world. And I'm not particularly a rightist or leftist. I'm not a Democrat, Republican, or anything like that. I just try and be smart. And what the U.S. is doing is absolutely wrong. I mean, they really aren't even following the Constitution. It's terrible. And so I wanted to get out of the U.S. and I actually took a world map and I started crossing places off of places I didn't want to go. Maybe the language was too hard or the politics I didn't like. Not that I like the politics anywhere. Maybe Switzerland, but that's too cold. But so I knew I wanted to get out of the U.S. Even though I love the U.S. people, I love the land. I love the gringo. I mean, I'm a total gringo. I like things too big. I like crazy shit. But but what I found here is in Mexico, the culture is very welcoming. The people are also kind of crazy, and it also has a lot of regionalization. So there's regional foods still more,
Oh,
and
cool.
there's a lot of indigenous groups that are intact. Like I live in a place where there's like 60,000 speakers of a very unusual language for the indigenous people here, and there's other intact indigenous groups, and I just like the cultural diversity of that.
That's cool.
Um, so yeah, I mean, Mexico is just a wonderful adventure. That's why it's so popular with people from the U.S. Like, there's 1.5 million people who have retired down here. And right now, there's more and more people who work remotely moving to Mexico because the climate's so nice and the people are nice and there's internet. And so they're finding, like, a lot of younger people are finding it's an opportunity.
How is land, like is land pretty cheap down there compared to the US?
It's gotten more expensive, and that's because Mexico's doing well. Manufacturing is up, the economy is doing really well. Um, if you are willing to do what I do, and that is live remotely off the grid, then land prices, of course, plummet,
Sure.
especially since in Mexican culture, there isn't the same kind of pioneer mentality of like, I want to go out to a faraway place and live off the grid and all that. I mean, it's growing. There's more people now that like that. But in general, people want to live as close to the plaza as possible. So the cost of land is way higher in the cities. Going out into the country and living like a poor person is not popular. And that's good if you want to buy land.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so how does like food for like how do you sustain with like the economics and everything? Do you do like a farmer's market or how or is it mostly
There,
events?
that is that's a really complicated question on how to survive because like all my friends go up to the US to work, all my Mexican friends, because they can make 10 times more money up there. So the way for most people to survive here would be to work online. And I have
Sure.
Starlink, and that's really fast connection. So that change, having Starlink available, has made it so you can move out to nowhere, but you could still be making money in New York and LA and London. And so the economics have changed in that regard for most people. So for remote workers, it's perfect.
How do you get
Um,
Starlink? You can just
it's just sitting on my porch.
it's just sitting on your porch. You have to pay for that monthly?
Yeah, I pay about $50, $56 a month.
Oh,
So
and
it's
it's
it's it's it's like half the price it is in the US for some reason. I think it's just a marketing thing. But but I actually want to, as far as my own thing is, growing food and selling it is not going to make enough money, not by my
sure.
standards. I don't want to compete with the locals anyway who are doing it, but I do want to grow food for me. So food forest farming is not economically profitable currently. And the truth is, food forest farming is competing with the oil fueled agricultural industry
Mm,
currently. But that industry is going to become more and more expensive. The way they're doing agriculture is just wrong.
it
You look at a
totally
place like
is.
California, they're draining their aquifers every year, and those take 10,000 years to recharge or something geologists know. I just, I'm not sure. But we're going to see a lot of industrial agriculture becoming more expensive. And because it's all fossil fuel based and people are shipping food around so far, it's just the wrong way to do it. Places like Chicago, I don't know how they're going to survive.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean, I live in like an industrial agriculture. I mean, I'm in the cheese curd capital of the world in Ellsworth, Wisconsin. And
Oh, really cool.
so there's a lot of but it's crazy. Like you don't need all those inputs. Like all these
Yeah.
shortcuts just like they deplete the soil. I mean,
Yep.
my last farm I started on, I basically inherited it from like a conventional farmer. And I mean, the soil was just dead. There was no organic matter. There's like
That's
nothing.
right.
I mean,
Yep.
it's just stupid. And then you're so dependent on the USDA with all these loans and it's like another form of slavery. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. It's all controlled. You've heard of Joel Saltine and Polyface Farms. And one of his books that I have is called Everything I Want to Do is Illegal,
Yeah.
because they have all these restrictions on the small producers that they can't meet. The only people who can meet those requirements are enormous systems, and big systems will fail. They
Yeah.
work now for economies of scale, and the government helps them out and even subsidize them. But the big win is going to always be in the small distributed farms, where people are raising rabbits and chickens, and those are providing the fertilizer to grow things that grow with the natural rain pattern, not with irrigation. And that's how we win long term. And I'm not, going to fight the government or the agricultural system. I don't need to. They're going to fall apart.
Yeah.
I just need to create the alternatives and have examples of, wow, we can produce a lot of food that wants to grow for us, right? And rabbits don't even eat food that humans can eat. They'll eat like forest plants.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and they're great.
I,
It's great for your
yeah,
soil too. rabbit
Yeah,
meat?
I've had great luck with rabbits, and we actually tan the hides, and so that provides you with really warm clothing. So when it is kind of chilly, if you have a rabbit hat and a rabbit jacket, you're not going to be cold.
I would love to see the rabbit jacket. That'd be sweet.
Yeah, and they're cute. I mean, it is hard to kill them, of course, because they're so damn cute. But that is part of raising meat. You know, if you eat meat, you're killing stuff. So,
So do you have a lot of animals out there or just food forest?
well, I focus mainly on perennials and the food forest. That's the primary goal. I live in an oak and pine forest. There's also madrone trees. I think the scientific name is arbutus, and those actually do have a little red fruit. Sometimes people call these strawberry trees, and you can eat those, but they don't produce tons of them. I've thought about like using them to add a color and a slight flavor to mezcal, because there's a mezcal distillery across the lake here, and that would be fun. Um, I plant a lot of agaves. Agave is used to make mezcal. I don't currently have a still, so I don't make mezcal, but it's legal here because this is the land of the free. The US is not the land of the free anymore.
That's
Maybe it
interesting.
was at one point.
That's interesting. I've never been down to Mexico, but I'd love to go down there and see what's going on.
Yeah, well, it has a wide variety of places. So some of them you might like, some of them you might not. I would avoid touristy places personally. I mean, obviously they're popular, so there's reasons people go there. But like the place I live in isn't that popular, and I like that. If I do want tourism, I want it to be very slow tourism. People who go to a place for a month or
Yeah.
longer for some project or for some, like training course or something like that. I don't like the idea of, having people show up, take a few pictures and then go on. It's not useful tourism.
So, like here in America, there's problems with like seed genetics. What are because they're messing around with the seeds and you can actually
Sure.
own the patent to I mean, as a
Yeah.
vegetable grower, these hybrids, it's pretty much like what you have to grow now, but you can't
Yeah.
really save seeds. And what is it like down in Mexico?
I think Mexico actually made a regulation against GMO corn. And I'm not inherently against GMOs. I mean, we'll probably kill ourselves anyway because we'll genetically modify some tiny organism, some wee beastie that will kill us all. But the larger plants, or if we were to recreate dinosaurs or something, that's not going to destroy society. The bigger problem, which you just mentioned, is that those seeds are owned. They
Yeah,
own the genome, and that's just evil.
it's
That's
super
just
cool.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Now you have to buy from these companies,
Yeah.
and if you don't, and it's crazy even what like Monsanto's doing with like corn, it blows over into a farmer who's not even using that, and then they get sued, and they have like 70 private investigators that just investigate these farms.
I consider that genetic trespassing. You should sue Monsanto for having their genes come into your land.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it should go. And I think someone did that. And I don't know if they won or not, but for them to like make a product that then invades your land and then claim that you stole it, it's like, no, you invaded.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, you don't hear much about Monsanto anymore. I think they've taken a new form of some other company,
I think they changed their name or something. Yeah.
changed their name, but it's really really fascinating. I've always wanted to start a food forest, but I've always leased land, and
Yeah.
so it's hard, you don't want to start a food forest and then, about 4 years in have to move and then have to start all over again.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because food forest farming is not a way to make money quickly. I mean, you're looking at a 30 to 40-year investment. I mean, I plant walnut trees. I'm going to be dead before I see a walnut on those trees, you know. And so you have to be thinking like 7 generations out or be thinking for your whole community. And I'm very into the idea of like food sovereignty, of having food just growing everywhere all around us. For example, nopales, right? Opuntia species. These are a cacti that have spikes on them. It wouldn't do so good up in Wisconsin, but that's a really great superfood that you can just cut a paddle of it off and put it on the ground, and then it'll grow a new tree. And it's super nutritious. They have like I have 4 species of them. I'd like to get them all. Um, and I think it's even on the Mexican flag, the nopal plant. There's an eagle sitting on a nopal tree.
Oh, nice.
Um, so if we grow things like that that require no irrigation, no additional water of any kind, it just grows with the natural rain patterns, no fertilizer. That's the kind of agriculture that's going to have us win. And that's not a new idea. This isn't some like permaculture invention. That's how people used to farm.
Yeah.
And we're finding new evidence of like places in Brazil, Yucatan Peninsula, the Northwest up in British Columbia, where the natives weren't just walking around harvesting what there was, they were adjusting the biosystem for their benefit. And of course, that was benefiting the local wildlife too, which they could hunt. So everybody wins in a really healthy biosystem like that.
So how much maintenance is required for like a food forest system?
Well, in theory, nothing day to day. In fact, nothing day to day unless a tree falls on your road, which one did the other day. Um, but if you want to be more productive, then yeah, you got to go do stuff. And because I want to collect plants from all over the world, I don't just want to do natives, which some
Oh,
people will
nice.
immediately have a negative reaction to that. Like, oh, you're planting non-native plants. That's terrible. They're invasive. And it's like, there's a small percentage of plants that are invasive. So don't plant those.
Yeah.
That's easy to do. But like a walnut tree is not going to take over, you know. And if it was able to reproduce itself without human help, that would be actually astounding. Because we also see, you know, there's going to be climate change over time. And so what trees grow natively in a place aren't the ones that are going to grow in 150 years in the same place.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm planning for climate change, which means I want to collect every single cool plant from all over the world and either grow it here or with partners in nearby climates. Because the state I'm in has tropical stuff down at the coast. So they grow mangoes, papayas, coconuts, um, all this stuff that needs a hotter climate that I can't grow here very well unless I was to make a amazing microclimate and care. But I don't have to. It's not far. So um, by collecting all these plants, we actually are in a much better position than our ancestors were. Let's
Mm.
think about that for a second. There was no potatoes in Europe until they came from Peru to Europe. So we think about Irish people and potatoes. Well, they didn't have any before. Um, the tomato came from the Americas to Europe. And at first they thought it was poisonous. There's actually funny stories you can look up about that, where some guy stood in front of a church or something and ate a tomato to prove this is not a poisonous thing. And now, of course, we think of, you know, tomatoes and Italian pizza, and tomatoes are everywhere. And it's the same for things that come from Europe, where a lot of genetic things came to the Americas. Like I have European basket willows, and it's a willow tree that is really good for making baskets with. And so I want to grow that. So it's not always just about food. It's about collecting the best genetic plants to make your society more powerful.
Mm.
So we have advantages that 400 years ago nobody had. We
Yeah.
can definitely do this.
So how long did it take? So how many acres? So you have like an 83 acre spot. How many acres is actually in production?
Well, I'm one person here right now. So it's all in production for its own purposes. There's oak trees and pine trees and all that. But as far as gardening goes, I barely do any. Most of the work I've done is in plant reproduction. So I'll take cuttings of stuff or I'll grow things from seeds. I'll put them in 5 gallon buckets. And then those need to grow up big enough so that I can put them out into the forest, and they have to survive on their own then. If they can't survive on their own, I'm a mean gardener. I mean, if they can't make it on their own, they're going to die. And they're not the right plant for me.
Yeah, it's
So
a
I do, but I do baby the babies, and that does take some time and work, especially during the dry season. You have to water them, um, And I would love to if I really reopen this place, I would love to spend 10 or $20,000 just on buying trees that I don't have. But I've got a nice collection now. I've got like four kinds of grapes. I've got four kinds of figs. Um, I've got I'm growing palms for no reason really at all. Uh, and a lot of the things I grow, I'm not growing just for people because a lot of people who are into permaculture and food forest farming, they only focus on producing food for people. But I'm trying to produce food for the whole biosystem. So for wildlife, for insects, you know, so that bats have something to pollinate. I want owls, and I want to have a lot of wildlife here. So it's not all about the humans. That's one of the biggest mistakes that some people make is they just want to focus on what people want, and it's like, no, we need the full ecosystem.
So have you noticed like a change in, because like 20 years, that's a long time to be on a plot of land. Have you noticed like a change in like the animals over time?
Yeah. Um, well, one of the problems I have is I have five dogs, and so the dogs do keep a lot of animals away. Like when I first moved here, coyotes would come up to my house and just look at me, just to
Oh,
see like, what is this weird person doing here? Who's this strange animal that isn't us? But they don't come around here anymore because of my dogs. And so
oh,
what I
sure.
need to do is put up more fencing to control the dogs because they actually are working against some of my goals.
Hmm.
But I have noticed that bird life has increased. I do want to put out more spots with water, like have little oases, and that will increase wildlife a lot because the dry season is too dry. It's not good. People have tapped off the springs up in the mountains here, and so water that used to come down through a big ravine that goes through my property, it doesn't. There's no water there now, and so I have to make up for that by building rain catchment that is specifically for filling pools for wildlife,
Oh,
and
cool.
that'll increase the wildlife and the bird life. I mean, if I did that, if I had like 10 cool spots like that, then there'd be 10 times more birds here. Be great.
So how long did you just start on a raw piece of land and then you had, or was there infrastructure in place or?
Yeah. Luckily, there was two houses here already, and it had been abandoned for a while, so they were in pretty bad shape. But I re-roofed them, and and that was really helpful to have some infrastructure. If I was doing it on raw land, then I would come in with tents and things like that.
Sure.
Luckily, the climate is easy enough that you could do it that way. And now I've built a bunch of cabins, so I don't even know how many buildings I have. I think I have 12 buildings or so.
Does Mexico have laws against people staying like in America, unless they're agricultural workers, you can't really have other
Right.
people stay on,
This
and
this is a reason to get out of the U.S. because everything in the U.S. is regulated. You
mm,
can't be free there, and so there are no regulations here. I've had small events up to 65 people. I can build a building with no permit whatsoever, which I've done. I could have building workshops here and build more things. And it's because I'm off the grid too. I think once you're on the grid, there probably are more regulations here,
sure.
but I'm taxed like I'm a cow field. I mean, on 83 acres of land, I pay under $400 of tax a year.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
That's not going to work in the US.
no,
And in
there's
the US, they don't let you have a composting toilet. Why not? You have to poo in water? Really? You're going to make a law that demands I poo in clean water and waste it? And then I have to hook up to your sewer system or have septic and all this other weird shit? No. Here I just have composting toilets. They work perfectly fine. There's no plumbing. I have five of them right now, and there's no laws against that. And there shouldn't be laws in the US. People in the US should demand the right to build composting toilets and a whole bunch of other freedoms that they're not allowed to have. It's crazy. I don't know why people put up with it in US.
Yeah, even as like a vegetable grower, like butchering chickens, like you can only sell chickens that you butcher yourself if they come to the farm and purchase it. You
Right.
can't bring it off the farm.
Right.
Otherwise, you got to go to a USDA facility and, then you got to deal with the bleach and all the
Yep.
crazy stuff of,
Here, I've actually raised rabbits, and then I sold one to the mayor of the town, the local town. Nobody here cares. And nobody got poisoned, nobody died. I mean, we killed it and we delivered it the same day. There's no risk. And this is true for beef around here as well. There's not these big cattle feedlot things. The cows around here just walk around eating grass and stuff. And then they have one bad day at the end where they get put in the back of a pickup truck. They go to the slaughterhouse and they get killed. Yeah,
yeah.
that's murder. Vegans aren't going to like it. Oh, well. But that's healthy meat then, because that meat goes directly to the butcher and it gets sold directly to the people. It doesn't get shipped across the country. I mean, there's cases where people ship stuff to China, have it processed and shipped back, and it's just like, this is insane.
Well, it's crazy when you visit one of those. I mean, when I was way younger, I worked on a factory dairy farm for like one day, and I saw that.
Yeah,
And I'm like, I want nothing this is not
it's
farming. It's
it's the
crazy.
wrong
They
way.
they got to be pumped with so much antibiotics to even stay alive and
Yep.
growth hormones and all this crazy stuff. I mean, it's sad because these farmers are just so hooked on all that stuff, all the inputs and everything that they can't even escape. Like a lot of these
Yeah,
conventional farmers want to be organic, but they can't because they've invested, you know, $400,000 into a combine that's only, for corn, and they have to
yeah,
keep, it's in order for them to switch their entire system, they would have to make millions of dollars in investment, and they're so far in debt that they can't ever change to get out of the convention. And, it makes you make more money to have your crop fail than to actually have abundance or, as an
yeah,
organic vegetable farmer, if hail comes or something, you're just done. You don't have crop insurance. Your crop
yeah,
insurance is the CSA model,
yeah.
essentially.
I am scared for the future of the United States.
It's pretty, it's very nuts, and all the land's being bought up and developed, and it's so hard for beginning farmers to even get started or find, because I'm a first generation farmer, so I've always
Yeah,
had problems with just finding land that has water or, things able to grow food. But
yeah,
it's so unprofitable now that there's no next generation to even fill the gap. And it's
yep,
it's it's sad. A lot of there's family farms going out of business every day here.
yep. Yeah, it
But
is really, really sad because I do love America. I love what it used to be. Not everything about it, obviously. I'm not a fan of slavery or genocide, but the freedom that the U.S. used to have is the reason it became such a successful nation, where somebody could go out and they could grow their own food, and then they could grow food to sell, and they could survive, even in tough conditions, even in tough climates. I mean, Americans are innovative, hard workers, but the government has decided, nope, you don't get to, have your own land. You don't get to have your own autonomy. And so they're in league with the big companies. There's a form of oligarchy. Oligarchy is ruled by the few. There's one called plutocracy, which is a subcategory of oligarchies, and that is ruled by the wealthy. And that's what you have in the United States. It is not a functional democracy in any way.
yeah,
You can vote if you want, but you're not going to have a candidate you can vote for that has anything to do with supporting freedom.
yeah,
If
I
a
stay
candidate like that ever
out
got
of
close to it, sorry, go ahead.
I stay out of politics for just because I like to be peaceful. Well, I
Well,
just don't even want to deal with it. Like I don't want I
considering the massive polarization in the US, that's actually one of the worst things. Like most of my friends up there are on one side and they hate the people on the other side, and the people on the other side hate the people on the other side, and you can see a graph of it. The US has polarized over time, and that's really bad for the country and could even lead to a civil war. I mean, it's not looking good because both sides think that they're so righteously correct, and it's like I'm just looking at them like you people are all nuts, and I'm not a moderate. Okay, I have extreme views, but freedom is one of them,
Yeah.
and neither one of those sides wants freedom for everybody. So,
So how long did it take you to get established with like infrastructure? Do you have any help that helps you, or is it just you?
well, I made money in the U.S. because things do take money, as you know, and I invested it here. The first 3 years were very difficult because I had become used to living in an urban environment. So moving out to the middle of nowhere, I didn't have like solar panels, I didn't have internet. So I spent the first 2 years without connection. I didn't speak Spanish. That's not good here because nobody speaks English here. So I was confused for about 3 years, just trying to make some things work. But luckily, I had the money to make them work. You really do need a lot of investment. So over time, I learned Spanish. I made friends in local towns and figured out how to hire people to help me. And and so things improved slowly. Um, and then I did host a lot of people for a while, and that was one economic option. Like you mentioned, because you have to figure out the economics of whatever you're going to do.
Yeah.
I had a lot of volunteers. I didn't charge hardly anything, and so I slowly just kept losing money,
Mm.
and that obviously isn't sustainable. And so then about 5 years ago, I broke both my legs.
Oh
I broke
no.
both my femur bones in two spots each, and those are big bones. Those are the biggest bones in a human body. I fell off a roof while I was doing a video of a town party, which at least I was in town because they gave
Yeah.
me a ride then to a hospital. And now I have lots of metal in my legs and stuff like that. But if I had fallen down alone in the forest, I would have just died. It's not safe to live where I live, just pragmatically speaking.
So how
I,
did you
I,
survive with two broken legs living off grid? I mean, because you're pretty much out in the wild.
it took me 8 months to get back here. I stayed in somebody's house in town, and the lady of the house was a former EMT, and so it was fun actually. I got to live with a Mexican family for 8 months, and they fed me a lot, which caused me to gain a lot of weight and get a little bit fat. Um, but they were really nice people, and I finally got back after 8 months, and then it was still difficult. And I had a woman come down as a volunteer, so she enjoyed living here, and her only job was to bring me food twice a day as I slowly, I was using a walker and I was all disabled and stuff. But it was really educational and it showed me or reminded me of the fragility of life. Like you could get hit by a car tomorrow.
Mm.
We got to do shit now. There is no time. And you see the gray in the beard. I'm not going
Yeah.
to live forever. So I need to do this stuff now or never. And one problem I have uh, is that I don't have any heirs. I have
Mm.
nobody to will this land to. And there's plenty of people, if I say that will say, give it to me.
Yeah.
But that's kind of annoying because they're usually people who don't have the skill or motivation or
Sure.
investment to actually continue the project. So
Yeah, that's a
my biggest fear is I die and this all gets cut down and becomes avocados.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the crazy thing about like farming a piece of land because there's so much investment and time and labor and you have your systems. If somebody doesn't even understand any of that, it's your basically your whole impact on what you did on that land could be destroyed overnight.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it's very nuts. Um,
Yeah.
so do you have a plan for what you want?
I think I do now. I'm recovered from the injury. That was 5 years ago. And what I'm going to do is not host short-term people anymore. I'm going to look for longer-term people who share a lot of values with me.
Hmm.
And and probably turn the land over to a nonprofit, but even the nonprofit will need a bunch of people in it
to
who either
sustain it.
live here or are supporters of it who have the same values. And and I think that's the goal, is to find people with the right values. And you know, I'll die either way. Life is so temporary. But I would die happier. I'll die with a smile on my face if I think that there's people who are going to protect it, enhance it, and make a model that other people can then copy.
Yeah.
Because I would love to see more food forests all around the world in different climates. That people take some of the philosophies I've developed and then they adjust them to their climate or their own culture or values, and they make their land be productive again, because we are killing the earth. And probably, I mean, I have fairly dismal views on this. I'm kind of a doomer. I expect that we're going to see a massive human die off. And after that, if anyone survives, then I want them to have a good relationship with the earth where we're enhancing it. And the oceans are filled with fish again. There's wildlife again. I have these hippie utopian notions that things could actually be good. And so I want to be a tiny part of promoting that vision.
So, I mean, and it's crazy to think because, like, if you were to think generally or generationally as far as a
Yeah.
food forest, I mean, you could really, if you had 150 years on a plot of land, you could really make something pretty sweet.
Imagine it. Imagine it. Imagine if every single building was doing rain capture, if they weren't wasting any water on toilets or showers. I prefer saunas to showers. They're more effective and nicer anyway to get you cleaner. Uh, if we did collect all these genetic species from all over the world, and we're putting them in the right microclimates where they want to grow for you, then you could really just walk around and collect food. And
Yeah.
150 years is a really good time frame. Hopefully, you could do it a little faster, but yeah, in 150 years, we could actually create in various climates places that are just spewing food out for humans and for animals.
Mm. Yeah,
That's a great vision.
it's crazy. I really am attracted to the food forest model, at least for just homesteading purposes.
Yeah,
There's a lot of it's a blast being a vegetable farmer, but there's a lot of doing it that way that, like you're so busy that you don't even have time to cook. You just kind of
yeah,
graze the fields and it's stressful
yeah,
and it takes a lot of the joy out of, growing food. And then you have to grow to
yeah.
like perfection and
Well,
it's
you live in a very difficult position being in the US because you're living in an empire that is probably dying, and they're going to regulate you to hell. And you probably don't have a really supportive community around you. You could grow specialty products, and maybe you're lucky enough to have a farmer's market where people will pay a little bit more than for a normal product, but you cannot compete currently with the oil fueled system on price.
no. Yeah, it's here it's gonna turn into like agriculture as an experience because like when the robots come, food prices are gonna just drive down to nothing. And then there's just gonna be a couple companies that
But I expect that to collapse, and that should give you hope,
why do you expect it to collapse? Just
because fossil fuels are not going to be as cheap and easy to get. Fossil fuel prices will continue to go up, and there is no magic other energy. I mean, I live on solar power. I'm very good at it. I use very little energy, but right now the world is just high on fossil fuels. I don't have a refrigerator. I
yeah, how
mean,
do you work that?
which is a great question. People always ask me that, and they're like, 100 years ago, nobody had a refrigerator. So obviously we can do it. It's doable. It's just we're so programmed that we need all this stuff, and it's like, no, that's all fake.
Yeah.
And I'm not morally against refrigeration. In fact, if I got more solar panels, I might get a little refrigerator. But most people's refrigerators are just full of food that they're not going to eat anyway. It's going to go bad before they get around to it. back in civilization, I mean, I wasted so much electricity. I had a hot tub that was running 24/7. I had a freezer in my basement that was huge that I didn't really even need. I mean, I wasted tons of energy. And so I understand it. I'm not an asshole who's critical of people living in the industrial world. I have friends that fly around the world for vacation. Oh, well, that's the world we live in now.
Yeah.
But that isn't the world we're going to live in later. It's all going to collapse.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if it did collapse, Americans are toast. I mean, most of these people don't even understand where food comes from or how to
Yeah.
even grow. I mean, it's agriculture is becoming like a lost art, like that the
Yeah.
actual ways to integrate
Yeah.
with nature and use
Well, when you
nature
look
to
at
just,
labor, it used to be that very high percentage of the population was involved with getting food and preserving food, because that's another thing to get into is, drying food and fermenting food and having root cellars and things like that. But it used to be a lot of the percentage of the population was involved with food. Now less than 1% is, because of the machines. We have this horsepower, not horses, it's fuel, it's oil. We have all this oil-based fertilizers on our dead soil,
yeah.
so we can fake fertility. It's not real fertility, it's sterility. And so, as fossil fuel prices go up, the price of that kind of food will go up. More people will be working in agriculture again.
Mm,
You know, like right now, all my friends here, when they go up to the States to work, they work in the wineries up there, and they can make 10 times more money working in a winery up there than they do down here. And they go up with a visa. They have an agricultural visa, so it's legal. They don't have to jump the wall anymore. So that's good for them because illegal
yeah.
immigration is actually not really great for anyone
No.
except the companies that take advantage of it, you know. But it's not good for the consumer. It's not good for the American worker. It's not good for the Mexican worker. Legal immigration is preferred. Um, and I'm happy those guys go up there and they send the money back down here to their families. But this area is great for agriculture, so I want to promote the idea of food forest agriculture here, food sovereignty here. I want to bring in species and then give them to my friends. I do that now. I give away seeds to people. I've given away seeds of like daikon radish, and I think it was 3 years after I gave away seeds of that I saw it in the market. And I
Oh,
was like,
nice.
yeah, I'm pretty sure those daikon radish came from the seeds I gave away, you know?
So is there a good community down there? Because I mean, there was on one farm, I was pretty isolated, and that was pretty tough to not be, because I was doing a delivery model. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't even get to interact with the customers. And so it's pretty hard living out in isolation.
Well, it's extremely hard. And to be honest, I'm moderately nuts. I mean, being alone for as long as I've been, how could I not be? I mean, we're social creatures, right?
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't have to be that way. Luckily, there's towns around here. Like the nearest town is only 400 people. Everybody, of course, knows who I am because I look weird, and I am weird. But what I've done before is I've taken the eggs from chickens and then I sell them to the store, and then they mark them up a little bit and they sell them as ranch eggs for the kind of people who are willing to pay a little bit more because they don't want the industrial eggs.
Mm,
And that's my competition. I'm competing with the industrial egg system here in Mexico. And my new weird thought, is I have so many weird ideas, it's nuts, is I want to get Morans. Morans are a species of chicken that make an egg that has a chocolate brown shell. It's a dark colored shell. And I want to do that because I want to sell eggs that are easily distinguished from the industrial eggs.
mm.
And the truth is, the egg inside is exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a little more healthy because it was raised on a farm and had better
Well,
food.
I mean, you can see in the yolks, like it's usually like
Right,
an oranger yolk when you've got a good farm raised chicken
right.
or farm
I
raised.
want my eggs to look so different that also people will buy it just because it's kind of exotic. And so these Morans are not as productive in terms of laying quantity. They don't lay as often, but that's a real way to have a very different looking egg. The other option would be Americanas or Easter eggers, and they have a light blue or a light green
Yeah.
egg, but it's just a little bit of tint. And so I'm really liking these really dark brown ones. They're just so different. And of course, I could spread rumors that they make you more virile or something, and maybe that will help.
So, what's the biggest challenge of doing what you're doing?
Uh, well, the breaking the legs thing was a real uh, difficult thing to deal with. I think choosing the right people to associate with.
Hmm.
Lots and lots of people want to be volunteers, or they say they want to go work on a farm, or they want to partner with me in some way. But 99% of them want something that benefits them and takes from me.
Yeah.
And so I don't really trust people anymore. I'm fairly misanthropic. And a lot of my contact with people is on social media. And of course, on social media, a lot of people are just horrible. So
Yeah.
I've kind of lost faith in humanity, which I would say is a huge problem, a big barrier. And I need to get over that by very carefully selecting the right people to associate with and ultimately take this place over.
It makes a
Because
huge difference when you surround yourself with the right people. I mean,
yeah,
I no one wants a bad attitude around you,
right.
because like a bad attitude will ruin the whole everybody else's attitude, but like people who have great attitudes and have ideas and are creative and just
Yeah.
love other human beings. Those are the
Yeah.
types of people
And
that I
and
want
and
to be.
and for here, the success path won't just be agriculture, because I'm not just trying to solve energy problems here or agricultural problems. I know how those should work. If we can figure out the issues between people, that's where we'll really have the big win. So I'm attracted to ideas like uh, nonviolent communication, evaluating ourselves and our impact on others and how we communicate, which I'm not always fucking perfect at because I'm, a little pissed off at the world, I mean, and everybody else is damaged just like I am. We're messed up. So we have a lot of self work to do to work together well. And as you know, most intentional communities failed. Most of them fail before they even started.
Yeah,
They
it's
get people together who are incompatible on basic levels. They have to have meetings all the time. It's just constant conflict and stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm also attracted to the idea of radical honesty, where people are more honest. And it doesn't mean we have to be dickheads to each other. It just means that we have to really admit what we feel and what we want and be able to state that in a good way. And we don't always have to agree with each other. So my challenges in some ways are personal challenges of just being me, which is I'm a freak, and then finding other compatible freaks and then working together and building economic systems that bleed money off the industrial world for now, because there's lots of money out there. Like I want YouTube channels that bring in tons of money.
totally.
And I love being around creative people. I've done theater, I've been in music videos and movies, just a tiny bit, nothing famous. But I want more music. I want to have a music channel where we have acoustic music and people are writing it and producing it, and a lot of that's Creative Commons, because the challenges we face really, if we've solved, well, we haven't as a society solved it, but if we've solved agriculture and energy,
So,
then the problems we have are cultural.
oh, sorry. Uh, I, no, you must have the wrong place.
Yeah, this is, I mean, we're 227.
There's a delivery. Sorry about that.
So no problem at all. I wish I could get deliveries. That's another challenge I have here, is I'm too remote. So like I can't buy anything online or anything. I recently have talked to a hotel in town that might receive packages for me because I'm just too far out
So
physically and culturally.
how do you get supplies and stuff? You just got to go into town.
I have to go into town and my van transmission is currently failing. So it's very difficult. I need to partner with people who have resources and interest. And yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm not suffering horribly. I'm still alive. I have food. You know, my dogs are happy. As long as I have dog food and internet, that's the main thing I care about.
Dog food and
You
internet.
know, yeah, those are the basics. And then if I get over the challenges of my own distrust of people and misanthropy, then I can bring people into the project and they will bring it back to life. I will feel happier. And then this will be a model of success. Right now, it's a model of innovation. I've done a really good job at breaking away from society. Now, what I need to do is reconnect in certain ways, especially economically, with society to have it be really sustainable. Because like I don't even have a driver's license, I don't have insurance. I drive around anyway, but it's Mexico, it's rural Mexico. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's really a functional anarchy in the best sense, sometimes in a bad sense, but often in a good sense, where there's so much freedom that people do what they want to do, you know?
Yeah. I would love that. Yeah, I mean, you gotta have it's pretty regulated here. It's getting even worse. And it's
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you
be
one of the things that bothers me the most, an example of regulation. And I posted this online, and people just are so stupid. But it's that you can't sell food to your neighbor.
hmm,
You could give food to your neighbor. That's legal still. Although they might as well make that illegal as well. They might as well make it illegal to feed your own children because it's too dangerous. You might poison them. But you can't sell food to your neighbor. Why? Are you going to poison your neighbor? Really? Here on Sunday night down in town, 2 towns away, all the ladies go out and they put their tables out in the street and they sell food to their neighbors and they sell it really cheap. And guess what? They're already used to feeding their family. It's not like they're going to poison their neighbors.
well, it's cool. Down there they people probably actually cook. I mean, America's come like as a vegetable farmer, the hardest thing is, I mean, it's really easy to sell the dream, like a CSA model where you pre-sell everything beforehand, but
Yeah.
like actually selling stuff that people don't know about, like people don't even cook anymore. They just go to a restaurant and it's cooked for them and they have no, it's very crazy. It's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder and harder for a farmer to even.
See, all that's going to change. It's because you live in the golden age of an empire, slightly past the golden age. You're living in a dying empire. And so there's enough wealth that people can just, use an app and order food, something
Yeah.
I've never done in my life because I left 20 years ago. I feel like sometimes I'm like Rip Van Winkle or something because I see all this stuff online and it just sounds so sci-fi to me. I've never taken an Uber. I don't know about these things. Somebody drove me to the city recently, and we went to a Costco there because it was, so cool. I was gonna like buy some big food and stuff, and it was great. And it was great. It was like very sci-fi for me. You know, I just felt like I was in this other world. And this is in Mexico. If I went to the States, it would be more strange. Like I've never seen a QR code on a menu. Apparently those exist now. I just don't understand these things I see online. Anyway, so I went there and I have my cart full of all my cool products that are hard for me to get out here where I live. I was very happy. And I go in there and then there's this self-checkout thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I didn't know how to self-checkout. I don't understand this machine. And so they had to call somebody. The security guard had to call somebody over to like check my stuff out for me because I'm so out of it culturally. I don't know what's going on.
That can be a
It's
good and
pretty,
a bad thing.
yeah. If I ever visit the US again, I think it's going to feel really weird for me.
When's the last time that you've been in the US?
12 years ago, I was
12
there
years
briefly.
ago?
Yeah.
Do you
But I was
have
just there for a short time to see some friends.
do your friends ever come down to Mexico to
Some of them have. And when I first started this project, I thought that a bunch of people would come down, because I've been to festivals and a lot of my friends go to Burning Man religiously. And I thought, I'm making this cool alternative and they'll all come down here. But 20 years ago, most of my friends were having babies and they were busy with their jobs.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't come down then. And of course, for the first 3 years, I didn't even invite them down because I couldn't communicate anyway for the first two. And also, my infrastructure wasn't really good enough. And it's still really rustic. So I've lost contact with a lot of my past friends, unfortunately. Now we're on Facebook and all that. But now my place is pretty beat up. It's pretty dirty. It's rustic. People ask like, "Oh, do you have a pool?" And it's like, "No, I don't have a pool."
Yeah. Is it
You don't know
heated,
who
by
you're
the
talking to.
way?
Yeah, this is not a hotel. Go to a resort or something if you want that. But I have had some come down and they've had a great time, and I love driving them around to like little towns and cultural events and things like that because it's a wonderful area. Absolutely great.
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm originally from Michigan, so it's even hard to get people, a couple of states over to come. People
Yeah,
just are so busy that you really only can connect with the people that are like in your immediate circle.
yeah. Well, I'm getting into an age range now where there are more retired people. I also like the idea of the fire people. I think it's financially independent, retired early
Mm,
people. And so that would be a better demographic for me to host than it would be like hippies that never want to spend anything on anything and are just
yeah,
kind of slumming it in Mexico. I've become not a big fan of those folks, even though on an interpersonal level they're very nice and fun. But some of them are trustafarians traveling the world for years. They've never had a job in their lives,
yeah,
and that's just a different kind of person
yeah,
than I want to really focus on.
yeah. You want somebody with goals and
Yeah,
ambition and drive to do something or like just a
yeah,
plan.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, but don't lose hope. I mean, you mentioned like you've only rented land or leased it, and don't lose hope because things will be changing. And unfortunately, the collapse of civilization won't be pretty, but it's going to change things so that individuals will have actually more power over their lives again. Things will become more decentralized. And we have more scientific knowledge, we have the more genetic diversity. And so people like you could still be optimistic about the future. It's hard to do, but I
Yeah,
hope you
I'm
are.
pretty optimistic. I mean, I'm so isolated from what's going on. I only know what's going on in my little world. And I love my little world. So it's,
Well, good,
you know,
man. Then you're
I
winning. You're winning.
I
That's
am.
great.
And so I'm hoping to get my own land. I'm just trying to figure out what model. Part of me wants to get to like start an incubator farm in the inner city and teach people how to do that.
Sure,
And
sure,
then another part of me just wants to like ranch,
sure.
and my back is getting, I mean, I'm 37 now, and so my back it, it's had a lot of abuse from the vegetable days, so that the bending
Yeah,
over and weeding, it's not sustainable for the next 20 years. So I think
yeah.
cattle would be like a Joel Salatin model, or I just haven't figured out what the next. I took the year off from farming this year to basically focus on building the group and educating other people and serving other people. But
Yeah.
I'm excited. It's been a cool. It's cool to get out of your normal flow and into some, because that's when innovation comes and good ideas and um.
Yeah, who knows, man? I mean, you could raise ostriches or you know, one of the animals I've been interested in getting because I've been to an ostrich farm and they seem a little bit bigger than I want to handle, even though they're really cool. I saw one get butchered and the drumstick was like this big. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, like 50 people could eat that drumstick. But there's also an animal called an emu. Have you
Yeah.
heard of emus?
Do
Yeah.
these
Now,
lay eggs?
yeah, they blew eggs.
So can you
and
eat?
and they're not as mean as cassowaries. Cassowaries are a little bit bigger and meaner. And there's one case where cassowaries even killed a guy. They're smaller than ostriches and bigger than emus, but they're mean. Emus are apparently kind of nice, And those are raised more for the meat than the eggs, right? So they'd be like raising turkeys or something.
Sure.
So by raising exotic animals, you could up your price. And so, I mean, being 37 is a great age, actually. You know,
Yeah,
I
a
was
lot of
37 when I
wisdom,
moved
but
here.
you're still young enough to
Great. Like
labor.
old enough not to be stupid, young enough to still have vigor and have vision and do things. So you're in a great spot. And and there's a lot of people looking for that kind of innovation. And you're doing the right thing by talking to lots of people. You will find your way or your ways. And hopefully you'll attract the right people to work with you. I mean, that's the state I'm still in is I hosted over 3,000 people here. And that's one of the reasons I'm kind of misanthropic is I learned what people are like.
Yeah.
And a lot of them aren't good. Like even if 10% of them are sociopaths, that's too many,
Yeah.
you know, to have in your home. So as long as you protect yourself and you pick your people carefully, then if you add in your own special kind of innovation, who knows what you're going to create, man? You could create anything.
Yeah, that's well, what I'm and here in America, I'm excited to tie agriculture to real estate. And so I that's why I got into farming is I want to create new models. So I have about 8 models that I'm going to basically release to the world here in the next 5 years that I just,
Great.
like new opportunities for farmers. I want farmers to be able to make a good living, because it's pretty crazy to be a vegetable farm. I mean, when I started my farm, I was working like 20 hours a day, like through the night, and it is just for pennies, and
Yeah.
you're so isolated, and it's a hard life,
Yep.
so, but it's a good life, the peace and just being out in the sunshine and working with your hands and, being around plants and nature. There's nothing better, but it's.
Yeah.
And so that's my mission in life is basically to serve the small family farm and try to keep that going with some innovate because I don't know if the industrial model is ever gonna go away unless there's like a crazy collapse or something, but to be able to coexist, with to have some other opportunities so that just two companies don't control our food. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's
Well,
cool with the internet, it makes it way easier uh to meet like-minded people and people just doing like even in the past month I've met just some. I mean, we're sitting here talking. I mean, you're out in the wild, you've got a food forest that you've had for 20 years. It's super cool, man. Love it.
yeah.
Um so
Well,
what
interest is increasing. Interest is increasing in what you're talking about. And I think even COVID shook people up a little bit. Like they realized, wow, things are kind of more fragile than I thought. And other events will be occurring that will disrupt the supply chain. And
Mhm.
more people are going to think, uh, I don't have water in my house. That's bad. You know, I don't have food in my grocery store. That's bad. You know, cancer rates are going up, testosterone and sperm count is going down. We're sicker than we've ever been. Something's very wrong here. And people are
Yeah.
going to realize that. They are realizing.
Yeah, it's starting to, I mean, 2020, there was a big push for people. I mean, homesteading. I mean, there's a huge push, which is exciting, against the
Yeah.
industrial model. And people are going back to land and learning how to grow food. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's gives me fulfillment is just teaching people how to do that, because it's hard. There's a lot of things that go, especially if like as a vegetable farmer. I mean, I was growing 210 different varieties of vegetables, to be able to
Wow, that's
plan that,
impressive, man.
to be able to plan that
Very impressive.
out, so that people get 8 to 12 items a week with the weather and all the crazy stuff. I mean, there's so much that I I still don't know anything about farming, and I've been doing it for 14
Well,
years.
it sounds like you know more than most people. So it's great you want to teach them. It's great you're wanting to share that information because that's how we all win,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, it was good talking to you, man. I'm excited. Maybe someday I'll come down there and visit your operation and see. I love your tools and your systems, and be cool to see it firsthand and um,
Great.
keep
Well, I'm figuring out how to host people again. It would be lovely to host you here.
that.
So, and thank you for your work. I think that the work we're doing um, is really important for the future of civilization or humanity if we don't all go extinct.
So just for the record, what time is it there?
Currently, it is noon.
Noon. Okay, so you're an hour and 10 minutes behind.
Yeah, Mexico doesn't do daylight savings time. They were like, we're not going to do that anymore.
But good talking to you, man. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.
Total pleasure. You too.